Have you ever had anyone break up with you and tell you, "It's not you, it's me"? Well, when it comes to the selection tool, followed by the refine tool, I had to admit to myself, well, it was me. So in this video, I'm going to refine my understanding of the refine tool. Did you see what I did there? I also discovered that it might be a good idea if I learned how to use some shortcut keys, as well as work on my masking. This little project attempts to accomplish this. So, who is being taken away? Come along and see. I have 3 photos here, one of Central Park, one of this guy standing with his hands open toward the sky, and another of the UFO. I'm going to click on the UFO tab and copy the image into Central Park using my newly discovered shortcut key, which is a Control-C. Then I'm going to come over to Central Park and do an edit and paste. So now we have our UFO, or our flying saucer if you will, on our Central Park image. Now, if you take a look at this, it looks a little weird. Not just because it's a little bit too big, I'm going to resize it in a minute, but because it looks like it's got that just stuck on top of the picture look that we don't like. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to resize it a little bit, make it a little bit smaller, and move it around, and I will put it like that. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to change this background to Central Park. I'm trying to get into the habit of naming these. And then this one to UFO. Okay, so we have our 2 layers that we have named. Now, how do I get this to where it doesn't look so odd? Well, the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to duplicate the Central Park layer. So I'll just right-click and hit duplicate, and so I've got me a new Central Park layer. And when I duplicate the Central Park layer, I'm going to move it on top of the UFO, like that. Come on. Okay, now our UFO has disappeared, but don't worry about that. Now I'm going to give our duplicate Central Park layer a mask. So I'm going to make sure it's selected, and then I'm going to click on the mask layer. And I never like it when it's side by side. I always like to see that, give it that nested look, so I'm sure what I'm clicking on is the mask and not on my Central Park layer. Now what you do with the mask layer selected is you're going to go up here to layer. Now, first of all, before I do this, notice that our mask is white, but I don't want it to be white. I want it to be black. So I'm going to go up to layer and invert. And when I do that, I will have a black layer. So now I can have my mask to where I can paint over it. And the whole object of this is going to make these trees to where they look like they're in front of the UFO. So it looks more like it's coming down through the trees. I'm only going to do the left-hand side. When I practiced this, I did both sides and it took forever. And I kind of wished I'd picked something that was a little bit easier and not something with all these dangles of branches and all that. But I decided to go with this anyway, so whatever. What I want to do before I start painting is I'm going to select the UFO and change the opacity because I want to make sure that I can see what I'm doing and get a real beat on things. So I'm going to select opacity. I think I'm going to select opacity. Okay. And then I'm going to move the slider to where it's just thin enough, just faded enough to where we can see these tree branches through it. So once we have that, I'm going to re-click on the mask, and then I'm going to select the paintbrush tool. Now the paintbrush tool, remember, is always our go-to when we paint over things. So I'm going to select the paintbrush tool and make sure before you start painting that the white is selected, because see, this layer is already black anyway, and what we want to do is to get rid of that so that our trees will show through the flying saucer. So I'm going to make sure that the white is there. So now I've got my paintbrush tool selected. Now what I'm going to do is first I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to zoom in with the Control Plus. I'm on Windows, so I don't know what it is on the Mac. So Control Plus, I can zoom in, and I'm going to be working on this side. So I need my brush to be a little bit bigger than this, and to make it bigger, you're going to be clicking on the brackets. So one bracket, that makes it, this is the left bracket, makes it smaller, and the other bracket makes it a little bit bigger so that you can paint what you want. And I'm going to try to paint as much of this as I can. Now see how it shows through? We don't really want the sky in there, and that was what was the hardest part about this, is trying to paint the plant and not painting the sky. And since we have all these hangy-dangy things here, that's what made it difficult. But I'm going to go ahead and paint over this. And like that, I think I'll make that a little bit smaller when I go down. And make sure that all this is painted in. So we're only going to paint down to where the flying saucer is. I mean, we don't want to really get into the sky. Then we have this up here, which has a lot of trees, and we'll paint through that. The nice thing about this is once you zoom out, it's not going to look as bad as it looks when you zoom in. I think that's true about a lot of things. So then we'll get that. We'll get these trees right here, these trees right here, and down here a little bit. And so make this a little bit smaller so we can get this little branch here. And let me undo that. Okay, so let's make this smaller so we can copy that in and get some branches here. Make it a little bit bigger so we can get this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the opacity to make sure that things aren't looking odd. So we need to paint these trees. So we're going to get as many of these trees as we can. And it's not going to be perfect, I've discovered, but you know, we all want a custom fit in an off-the-rack world. But you're not going to get it with this, especially with these tiny, oops, I don't want that. These tiny little branches. That's going to be, okay, so these tiny little branches, get this over here, make this a little bigger, and we're going to try to get as much of the plants on the right as we can. Make sure we get the tree. I found that was the most important, is to get the tree in there. Because if you just have leaves hanging down and no tree, that's going to look really bizarre. Okay, make this a little bit bigger. See if we have this. And all this around here. So paint all this. And down here. So I hope you're getting the idea. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my UFO and change the opacity so that I can see what it looks like when it's all the way up. Okay, so now we have this going on right here, and I think we probably, and see how this is all blue there, so we might want to just try and Well, get rid of that. I don't think we can. That might be... Okay, so... let's see if we can... Oh, I don't want to do that. I want to make sure I'm on the mask. Oopsie. Yeah. So, let me see. We'll need to get as good as we can get with something like this. Okay, now, let us zoom out. Okay, and see what it kind of looks like. Now, fortunately for me, this flying saucer had some lights in here, so this screw up that I did right here probably does look like that. And I think you're going to kind of get the idea that if you do something like this, it is going to take some time to get it the way you want it. But let's go out. How far out? So now you can see that our flying saucer, if we get far out enough, actually looks like it's landing in between the trees. And that was kind of the look that we were going for, is that. Okay, now that we have that, we're going to have to find the person that is asking to be taken away. So we're going to go over and find this guy. And what we're going to do is we're going to have to cut him out of here and then take him over and put him in Central Park. So to do that, we're going to need to select the selection brush tool, and boy, that is small. Okay, and let's zoom in. Well, I'll do this first because we're going to have to clean it up anyway. And we're going to select him. And this is what I wanted to redo, because when we go to the refine tool, there's some things that I didn't really show on the refine tool that I'm going to be showing today when I do this dude here. Okay, so we have him selected. Now obviously he's not selected really well. So we're going to need to, okay, let me see. Okay. I'm clicking on this to select more of him. Now I'm going to control zoom in on him, and I'm going to need to get rid of this. So I've got to go up to here and click subtract, and then we'll subtract part of this. Subtract this on the hand. Okay. Subtract part of this on the mountain. Get rid of some of this and get as close as we can. Now this, we're going to have to do an add because obviously he's not completely, there we go. And right here he's not completely selected, and so on. So we're going to go down a little bit more, and this doesn't select at all. I had a little bit of a problem with this, but you know, if you work on it enough, it'll do something. Okay, that should be on add. Do we not have a selected brush tool selected? Okay, there, we're going to get rid of that. And then we didn't get all of his shoes, so we'll do add, get more of his shoes. I don't know why this isn't selecting. I may have to get it with the refine tool. Okay, so now we have that much selected. And now what we're going to do is we're going to click the refine tool. With the refine tool, we've done this before, but I never did anything except just to show you how to use the tool. So what we're going to need to do is just to keep it on matte, and then, and wow, look how big that is. We want to move this out of the way. We want to, his hand is too red, so we're going to need to fix the hand. And go over here and let me see this. Okay, we can use the selection brush tool. What I did was I clicked on background, because on background it's going to fill it in with this background, and we don't want him to look like he only has one leg. So we'll do that. And then we'll come down here and do this. I'm going to view it in a little bit to make sure that we've got everything selected we need to have selected. Okay, let's go back up here because his hand is still looking really strange. So we'll click on foreground to work on his hand. He's the foreground and the red is the background. And we'll get as close to that as we can, while still understanding we're in an off-the-rack world, so to speak. I don't remember where I heard that expression. So we're going to clean this up, and once we've cleaned that up, that looks pretty good so far. I'm not liking this, but okay. So once we've cleaned this up, we are going to go down here to Selection, and then Output, we're going to click New Layer, and then say Apply. Okay, now, where is our layer? Well, it is right here. And we'll have to turn off the old background to see it. So now what we can do is we can clean some of this up. I mean, we actually thought we had, but guess what? We haven't. So, since we haven't, we're going to have to get rid of some of this stuff. So, I'm going to, again, Control, come in on that, and pull this down. And then I'm going to select the lasso tool, which here is called the freehand selection tool. Other programs I've used, they call it the lasso tool. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lasso all this stuff around. Now remember, if you screw up, you can always go back with, edit. And now once I've lassoed this, I press delete and then enter. And then I'll lasso this, and then I'll press delete and then enter. And then I want to lasso some more of his leg. Hopefully I won't cut his leg off. And delete and then enter. And then lasso this black stuff down here. And we're going to delete and then enter. And then I knew this, every time I tried this, this piece was always the biggest pain. So we can, and I was told I'd be better off if I wouldn't be trying to do this with a mouse, but I'm kind of wedded to that. And enter. So that doesn't look too bad. And then we've got all this pink stuff. So we're going to lasso all that, and we're going to delete and then enter. And maybe, I don't want to press my luck, but maybe we'll just take this off. Once we get him into Central Park, it won't look that bad. And enter. So then let's go up and see if we can't, fix his pants a little bit. Oops. Okay, edit and undo. And we'll lasso that around and delete and enter, and let's go up, then look and see what's going on up here. I knew that thumb was going to be a problem. So we can lasso our thumb and delete and then enter. And I think that looks okay. That's good enough for government work. So now we're going to zoom out and we are going to copy him. So Control C, and then go back over here to Central Park, and we are going to edit and paste. Okay, so now we have him here. He looks a little big, so we're going to make him smaller and move him down. Come on, move him down. And so that looks pretty good, except for one little thing. He looks like he's levitating above the ground down here and not really standing on the ground. So we can fix that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and click on the ellipse tool and then come over and draw an ellipse right on top of his feet. Okay, so I'm going to move that here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill that with black. So I'm going to click up here on fill, go to swatches, and then select black, and that will fill right there. Okay, so I'll pull this out a little bit. Alrighty. Now, that really doesn't look great as it is. So what we're going to do is now we've got an ellipse layer. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to layer and then go to new live filter layer and over to blur and Gaussian blur. Now once we get to Gaussian blur, we're going to change the radius until this blurs out. And then it'll get to where that it looks like there's a shadow on top of his feet and it looks like he's actually standing on the ground. So once we get it to where we want it, then all we have to do is to close the box. And then we're done. So right now you've figured out, or we've all figured out, who's being taken away. It's this guy waiting for the UFO to take him away. So this is the final product. And after this, you would, check out any adjustments you want to make. To make this a little bit better, it probably takes more time, especially on this part, with all these trees and all that. But hopefully you've gotten something out of this and you try something like this too. And while you're at it, wish our guy a great trip.